So my name is Kayla and I'm an alcoholic. I have never spoken on a Zoom meeting before, so I apologize if I'm super awkward about it. Um, yeah, so my sobriety date is August 6th of 2018. So God willing, I will have 3 years this August. I feel like when I first came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was so afraid of trying to talk to people or trying to figure out who I was. And, the concept of learning how to be honest with not only others, but with myself was really, really difficult for me. I am not the kind of person who likes to be myself in front of a group of people. I would rather be what everybody else wants me to be. And that's the only way that I really feel comfortable. So coming into AA and learning that, this is my time and my opportunity to become my own individual person and not try and, mimic what the people around me want from me. That was a really rough pill for me to swallow. And I started, I felt like that from a very, very young age. I started drinking and using drugs at 11 years old. And I spent a really long time in the throes of my addiction. I don't like to talk too much about what it was like because I think everybody knows what it was like. But I will tell you about, what happened when I got here. My very first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous ever, I met my very first sponsor. And we started going through the steps right away. I was in so much pain when I first got here that I would have done anything for some relief besides drink. And so I got really, really involved right away, and I started working my steps. And the concept of step one, I knew for a very long time that I was powerless over alcohol. That was never that wasn't even a debate. That I accepted really, really early on. But unmanageable was a whole different story for me because I was able to hold on to a lot of material things when I was still out there. And so, I come into AA and I have to admit that my life is unmanageable. And I'm like, well, I still have a job sometimes, and I still have a place to live most days. And, coming up with all of these excuses to try and make myself feel better and try and convince myself that my life is still manageable. And, it took me longer than I wanted it to take me. I wanted to be able to just immediately say, okay, I give up. Like, my life is unmanageable. And that's just not what happened. It took me a little while to get to a place where I could not only understand what it meant for my life to be unmanageable, but to really admit that. And once I got to that point, it was fairly simple for me. Once I could recognize that I was making these excuses, it was fairly simple for me to accept that my life was unmanageable. And when I first came here, I had a huge issue with the whole idea and concept of God and a higher power. I was raised in a household where God was real, but he was a bad thing. And so it was this really strange hill that I had to get over to try and, learn and understand and accept a higher power as something that could help me. Instead of hurt me like I had been taught my whole life. So coming to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity was not, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm fortunate in that my first sponsor was very understanding of my reservations and was very, very specific with me when we went over the fact that I turn my life over to the care of God as I understand him. And that to me is, nobody else can explain to me what my God is or what my higher power is or what they're supposed to do or look like or feel like. And I am of the belief that, everyone has their own definition and should have their own definition. And because, we have to be able to turning our entire will over to something that we don't want to understand it's never going to happen. If we're successful in staying in sobriety because we have the ability to find a God of our own understanding. So once I got there and I started having these little God shots and these moments of clarity and all those kinds of things, once I reached that point, I was just totally hooked. And I was like, all right, God this, God that, God everything, And I wish I could say that I stayed on that fire this whole time. I didn't. I still pray. I still have a very good relationship and belief in my higher power, but I definitely don't do AA perfectly. I have a lot of days where I don't want to pray or something happens and now I'm resentful at my higher power. And I think the beauty of sobriety is that we don't have to do it exactly right every time. We can do them over again. We can do the steps over again. I'm currently working on my second 4-step. I've been sitting on it for a really long time and I have not wanted to do it. And my sponsor is in this meeting, so she's going to call me on it when I just said that I started it. So she's going to know if I'm lying. I'm finally working on my second 4-step. I remember when I did my first and I thought that the experience that I would have after doing a 5th step, like I thought everything was going to change because I got all of this out. I got everything off of my plate. And that's not my experience. Doing my 4-step, I spent several weeks very in my feelings, not knowing how to process the things that I needed to talk about, the things that I needed to write about. And then I did my 5th step and I was horrified that my sponsor was going to, think I was this terrible person and not want to work with me and blah, blah, blah. And I feel today that there's probably no one in AA that would ever do that to anyone during a 5th step. My sponsor was extremely understanding of every single thing that we went over. She tried to relate to me. She tried to put herself in my shoes so that I didn't feel alone. And that was really what I needed, especially in early sobriety. I couldn't handle feeling alone anymore. I had been alone for so long. So having someone who was willing to relate with me and try and understand where I was coming from was endlessly important. I really like talking about steps 6 and 7. I feel like in a lot of the meetings that I go to, we don't talk about it enough. My first experience with those steps was very quick, I guess would be the right word to use. I thought that I would do my 6 and 7 and I'd ask God to take away these defects and then they would just be gone forever. And, I spent the first almost year of my sobriety pretty miserable because I didn't understand, I had all these issues still, right? So you take away the alcohol and I'm supposed to be this perfect person and I wasn't. So I had all these issues still. I had all these emotional issues and this trauma and all these things that I'm trying to juggle and navigate and learn how to finally face for the first time. And I thought that all of those things were just going to be taken from me. And I remember feeling, at a couple months sober, shortly after I did those steps, I remember feeling like well, I'm going to work on it. I'm going to get there. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And at no point was it ever, I'm going to ask God to help me work on it, or I'm going to ask God to help me get through this, or ask God for just the willingness to help me get through this. I was so wrapped up in me that I completely lost sight of the fact that I can't do that. I don't have the power to fix all of these problems. I didn't have the problem to walk away from alcohol. That was not my own will. So I'll be damned if there's any way that I'm able to fix all of my problems by myself. That worked so well for me in the first 24 years. So I get to step 8, right? And I pretty much already have my list of people, pulled that from my 4-step, and I start making amends. And I can remember one of the first amends that I made was to a previous partner. And I remember leaving the amends feeling just so sick, to my stomach. And I just felt gross. And the amends, all things considered, went great. Very well received. Everything was totally fine. But I was so wrapped up in how bad I felt about it. And for the first time since I had stopped drinking, I found myself wanting to drink. The obsession to drink was removed from me very, very, very early on. And after that first amends, my first immediate thought, because that's how sick I am, my first immediate thought is, wow, I really did a drink after that. And, thank God I didn't. Thank God I had a support system. Thank God I had a higher power that I could fall back on during that moment of extreme fear and weakness, because I don't know where I would be today if I didn't have that support. I called a friend and I went to a meeting and I worked it out. After I started making more amends, it started to hurt less and less. Because I started, in the very beginning, it was me coming from a place of, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. And after I started doing it more, it started coming from a place of, these are the mistakes that I've made, and I'm going to not do that again. You can decide whether or not you want to forgive me, and you don't have to. And once I started to understand that no one owed me forgiveness, I stopped being so afraid of making those amends. I still don't do a perfect 10-step. I don't write it out every night. I do frequently call my sponsor and write inventories on things that are happening when they come up. And I do my best to try and, make sure that everything that I've done that can affect other people, that I'm taking responsibility for that. That's one of the most amazing things about sobriety for me today, is that I get to take responsibility for my actions. And not only do I emotionally have the capacity to take responsibility for my actions, but I understand what my actions are today. And when I was out there, I had absolutely no concept of what I was doing wrong, or that it even was wrong, because I was so focused on myself and the things that I needed to get, and me, that it didn't even register to me that I was hurting other people. I try to maintain a very good relationship with my higher power. I don't meditate as much as I wish I did. But I have been going through a little bit lately, and I was talking to my sponsor about it, and her recommendation for me was to open dialogue with my higher power. And instead of having just a general, the same scripted prayer that I say every single night, to have more of a conversation and have it be more, open and willing. And to be completely honest, that's made a huge difference. It really changes my perspective on things a lot when I make that extra effort. And I really feel, I've been really diving headfirst into AA lately. I've been going to as many meetings as I can. I've been talking to as many people as I can. And, that doesn't take all my problems away. That doesn't make everything that's going on in my life just disappear. But I learn how to deal with them, and I learn how to get through them, and I learn how to not drink over it. And that's pretty amazing. I got sober when my daughter was 2 years old, and I was not a good mother to her, and I got sober not knowing how to be a mom. And the women in these rooms really taught me how to. They taught me how to be a mother. They taught me how to take care of my child. They taught me how to be a human being, because there's a lot of days where I feel like I'm not a human being. And there are days at 2.5 years sober that I still feel like a newcomer. And there are days that I feel completely serene and happy and healthy in my sobriety. And, the best thing that I've gotten from AA is the understanding that an ebb and flow is okay. I spent so many years thinking that it had to be perfect all the time. And if it wasn't always perfect, then it was always bad. It was always miserable. And knowing today that the best thing that I can ask for is to be at a 5 and not a 2 or a 10, that's pretty amazing. So I'm really glad to be here. Thank you, Austin, for asking me to speak. Thank you for Christina for leading the meeting. That's all I got.